male 35, met my ex, female 26, when she was in her first year of college and I was in my last. We were both studying to become doctors, and that made us fall for each other very fast. We were like a match made in heaven. Some people say there's too much of an age difference between us, 9 years, but it seemed to work out really well for us because she looked up to me and respected me. I helped her study and pass exams for the next 2 years that we dated. During the beginning of our relationship, I graduated and started my own practice in the town. Within a few months, I hired a male nurse to work with me and was looking for a secretary. Meanwhile, my girlfriend started inviting me to her parents' house for dinner monthly, and we all got along really well. Her parents continued to hint towards making wedding arrangements. I usually just ignored them because I thought it was much better to date her longer and let her graduate. During one of these dinners, to change the subject from wedding arrangements, I mentioned how I needed to hire a secretary. My girlfriend's eyes lit up and asked if she could work for me. I asked how she'd keep up with studies while working full-time, and she said she dropped out of school. My jaw dropped in front of her parents. I was embarrassed that she told me this news in front of them because they already knew about it. After dinner, I asked her more about it, and she told me it was only going to be a short break. Her mother was going through medical treatments and would need help in the evenings and occasionally overnight. Although this didn't make a lot of sense to me, I agreed to let her start working as my secretary. During the next year, her routine was to work with me in the office and then help her mother in the evenings. If we were lucky, we had a nice dinner out and an evening at my place over the weekend. I loved having her in my office. Every time I got to walk by her, I was happy to see her face and talk to her. She made the patients feel optimistic and cared for, and she got along fine with the male nurse on staff. He even told me she's going to make a great doctor and wife. While we were out to dinner one night, I proposed. I warned her that we wouldn't get married until she graduated school, but that I wanted to promise ourselves to each other now. She was so thrilled and surprised. She called her parents immediately to share the good news. I was on cloud nine for the next few weeks. It all came to a screeching halt one day when I happened to see my fiancée in the break room at work. She didn't notice I was there, and neither did the male nurse I hired. They were sitting awfully close to each other, and he was whispering in her ear as she looked at her phone, pretending not to notice how close he was. From above the table, I could tell his arm was reaching for her legs. My heart was beating so loud. I was sure they could hear it. I speed walked to the security room where I looked at the security footage we had from the past few weeks. There were 2 times where I could see him touching her, but nothing else incriminating. That night, I invited her to my house, and while she was in the shower, I unlocked her phone. Her password wasn't what she told me it was, but my fingerprint was still able to unlock it. It was programmed on her phone from when she insisted we wouldn't hide anything from each other. I found what I was hoping not to. Texts between her and the male nurse indicating she didn't believe she got enough attention from me and that I took too long to propose. As I continued reading, I found arrangements they'd made for her to sleep over his house and commentary about how good he was in bed. Needless to say, I was furious. My hands were shaking as I held her phone. I was the one that helped her study, hired her at my practice, and trusted her to be my faithful bride. Using her phone, I sent myself the screenshots of their conversation and didn't even bother to cover my tracks. After her shower, she left to go help her mom. Right around the time she would have gotten there and had time to unlock her phone, she called me. I didn't answer. She called me again and again, 32 times to be exact. At this point, I felt powerful and proud of myself. I didn't blow up at her or lose my temper at all, which made her suffering even worse. She left voicemails that said she noticed I saw the messages and that I have proof of it. She begged me not to tell her parents or anyone else and said that if I forgave her, she'd be faithful to me forever. I laughed out loud. Anyone who can't prove their loyalty to someone for a few years doesn't deserve the promise of a lifetime. She had also shown me her flakiness in the way she suddenly dropped out of medical school. I tried to give her a chance to show me that she had the drive and respect I needed from her, that she needed from herself, but she failed miserably. I waited as long as I could to call her. She was so hopeful when she answered the phone, but all I said was that she was fired and didn't need to return to the office. She started sobbing just before I hung up on her. I also fired the male nurse, and it was easy for me to find replacements for both of them. My business didn't suffer at all. As a matter of fact, it improved. I hardly grieved over the loss of this woman, because had I married her, it would have been so much worse. I wasn't planning to tell her parents what happened, but after her father asked a fourth time, I sent him the screenshots I had. He replied with sympathy, encouragement, and expressed that I didn't deserve to be treated that way. The day after that, my ex left a voicemail on my phone screaming at me for telling her dad about what she did. She complained that they weren't going to pay for her schooling anymore because she proved herself to be an idiot. OP, I am so sorry you found yourself in this situation. You seem to be a great man with a good head on your shoulders. She chose to be unfaithful while she was working for you. She should have treated you with the respect you deserved as her boss and her fiancé. You are certainly right to assume that she would not be faithful in your marriage. Congratulations for handling yourself in a respectable way while maintaining your job as a doctor. Now, let's get into today's second story. I am writing this as a bit of a journaling exercise, and maybe for some support from people who have been through the same. Thanks for being so welcoming. We have been together since 2015, and early on I planned for this to be a lifelong relationship. It was rocky along the way, and this is part of the reason I never managed to propose. However, there is still a very mature ring fund, which will go somewhere else now, I'm sure. Around 2019, I began to think that maybe our relationship was not going to be like how I had imagined it. We fought a lot. Nothing physical, of course, just disagreements and mutual pouting and discontent. Our sex life dropped off significantly after 2016 for medical reasons, and it never really seemed to recover. In June of last year, we had a D&M where she said, in as many words, that I did not satisfy her. I had never satisfied her, and the thought of me in bed made her sick. It was very upsetting at the time, and in hindsight, I should have called our relationship then, but we decided initially that we would try to work our way through our problems, and we also ended up having a 4-month-long lockdown shortly afterward, so I didn't want to throw her onto the street or anything. Around September, I discovered she had been sexting some guy overseas, a total breach of trust, but I decided I would bracket it because there was nothing physical, and even though we never discussed it openly, I thought she knew that I knew. I never broached this directly, but we eventually decided we would go to couples therapy. I discovered yesterday that she slept with another man in November last year while she was out of town on a short holiday. Some random she met online, and I presumed she had been chatting with for a few weeks at least. I didn't care to ask for the exact date, but it was either shortly before or shortly after our first couples therapy session. When she went to work today, I left a note on the table saying goodbye, packed a bag, and went to my parents' place for a few days. This evening after she came home, we had an hour-long SMS-only discussion. I don't want to talk about it aloud. I can't put my words together in time to speak them, where she took responsibility for everything, promised to change, and asked if I would come back. I appreciated her honesty. I believe everything she has said. This was completely unlike her, something she acknowledged, and she is afflicted by both mental illness and gruesome sexual trauma as a child and young adult. But I said that this was a hard barrier for me, and I would not consider coming back, even if we continue to seek couples therapy for this issue. I said I would consider going back to our therapist to work through the breakup process, as we had discussed this previously in one of our sessions, and I can see how it could be helpful. It is also something our therapist has worked on. Even if we could make our way past this, and she found a way to fix herself, it would always be a part of our past, and something I will never be able to reconcile myself with while we were in a relationship. I don't fully believe that there has only been one other man. I asked how many other people she has had sex with during our relationship, and she said one, but I think this might have been a very strict definition of sex, and that she has been emotionally and physical cheating with several other men over at least the past 6 months, and even up until now. She said that this was a part of her life that felt like it was without consequence, and although that is obviously wrong, I can understand what she was saying. Anyway, the number doesn't matter. One is one too many. I feel very dirty for how I found this all out, especially since I was going by gut feeling, but I feel partially vindicated by my gut being right. I don't know if I can shake this feeling of shame for having been able to discover this, even though it is for the best that I know, and that we separate. I will likely be moving my appointment with my own therapist forward a few weeks to help with where I go from here. I don't quite know how she moved on from this, but I am trying my best to focus on myself. I don't know what I will do with myself yet because so much of who I am, what I do, and what I'm like revolved around what we were. I picked up my guitar for the first time in a few months and couldn't do much with it. I don't play as much now because I felt embarrassed playing around her. Not her fault. She was always very encouraging of all my creative pursuits. I have a few friends, but I am both a very reserved person and also someone who gets lonely easily. I might need to house share because I don't know if living alone is a good idea for me right now. I did say that I hope we can be friends one day, and I really do. Besides the infidelity and our other problems, she's great and we did gel in a very cool way. But in my heart of hearts, it doesn't seem likely at the very least as soon as either one of us starts seeing someone else. Unless they're super chill, I don't think it's going to work. I've decided that I'm not going to be super candid with other people about the circumstances of our breakup. There's no need to be, but it's something that I would mention to a future partner, and I can imagine for them that it would be a bit weird for your partner to be friends with their ex who is also a cheater. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. She will likely move to another city, and we won't have much opportunity to see each other again anyway. Anyway, that's my story. There were times this morning when I thought I might try to just let it slide and forget about it, but I'm glad the part of me which stood fast won over, because there was really no future knowing this. It would always eat at me. I don't know what the future holds, and I am truly scared because I have had struggles with alcohol and smoking in the past which my partner really helped me to temper. I stopped smoking as a condition of getting together, which I'm grateful for. Maybe with a sneaky cigarette every now and then at the pub, and I don't have that anymore. I have made a short list of things for me to try to do with myself for the next 4 weeks, and have committed to not buying any spirits at all for now, and only smoking if I've gone out and someone offers. I don't go out often, so this is generally sustainable for me. If there is anything any of you have done to get past the first few weeks and your breakup due to infidelity, I would certainly appreciate any advice. If you have made it this far, thanks a lot for reading. Hope you are getting along your journey all right as well. If you are, then feel free to drop into the comments and let me know that it gets better because I need it. It's sad when you have perspectives with your partner and you realize that it was only you who thought about a future together. In any case, according to your history, it feels that she was never an honest girlfriend to you. I think there are many red flags after the time together, for example, constant arguments and lack of sex. I think your decision is correct. She spent weeks preparing the last one she did where he went directly to sleep with him. The best thing you can do right now is to go get your things when she's not around and cut off all kinds of relationships, really. Why keep talking to such a disgusting person? Just say goodbye and cut your losses. Best of luck to you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts. My girlfriend, 25, and I, 28, were together for 7 years when I decided to end things. 5 of those years were long distance, and 2 were living together. I managed to get us a place together because I work hard. I have relatively normal hours, but my job does exhaust me. So she started complaining that I didn't give her enough attention, or when I did it was without passion, as she put it. She's an egocentric Leo, so compliments and attention fuel her reason for living. I was kind of laid back, and didn't feel the need to repeat compliments she'd heard recently. Pair that with how exhausted I could be sometimes, and I understand why she wasn't content. She'd be on her phone, texting away, and for a while, that became the norm. I tried to get her off it sometimes, but didn't have the will to argue when she refused. Suddenly, her neglectfulness stopped entirely. It was like a major U-turn in her behavior. She started questioning how she could be so lucky to have a man like me. She said she wanted to have my babies and give me all the good things I deserve in life. Talk about odd. I played along and assured her that she deserved a happy life with a man that knew how to handle her. She liked that, I guess. The only 2 reasons she ever gave me for her leaving the house were that she picked up a shift at work or was going to visit her longtime childhood female friend. One day, she went to her female friend's house and left her laptop at home. I opened it, even though I never did before, and easily found a document she typed out. It was kind of like journal entries. She mentioned feeling guilty about a fling she had with someone not so long ago. Apparently, it lasted a month, and she was heavily considering sleeping with him again. She would go back and forth between loving her boyfriend, me, and wanting to sleep with this man again, because she thought he was so cute for being unable to resist her. She typed that he'd left his girlfriend for her, so that she might be persuaded to keep seeing him, but added that she couldn't be with him because he was a cheater. The irony of that was comical. Needless to say, my blood was boiling. I chucked her computer on the couch and took a walk around the neighborhood to gather my thoughts. We had only been able to move in together because I got us the place. Otherwise, she'd still be living at her parents' house. Even though I was working a tiring job, that's no excuse for my girlfriend to cheat on me, right? I questioned everything and decided that there was no reason I deserved this. She demanded too much attention and only acted on her selfish desires. I could never trust her again and heavily suspected she cheated on me during the long-distance phase of our relationship. I went back to her laptop and found chat logs archived on her computer. She was talking to two men beside me during the time we were together. They talked about the sex they had and arrangements for the next time they could have sex. She juggled all three of us, claiming we were each her only lover. She used her parents as an excuse for being unable to meet up sometimes. Well, if I had any doubt before, it was certainly abolished now. I knew I needed to kick out this woman, or should I say girl. I sent her a text while she was still with her friend that said we were done, and one of us was going to move out. Since she couldn't afford the rent, I took the liberty of packing her clothes and taking them back to her parents' house. I was surprised it took her so long to reply. It just added to my suspicion. She wrote in all caps, "Why?" followed by other questions. By the time she started freaking out, I'd already taken her stuff to her parents. I didn't knock or anything, just left her stuff all over her parents' lawn. They lived close. So after 2 trips I was done and called her parents to let them know what was going on. Then I called my mom and told her everything. She was very consoling, assured me I was doing the right thing, and couldn't risk starting a family with this woman. She fueled me enough to change the locks on my place and continue resisting the urge to respond to my ex. Most of the messages she sent me were in caps and sounded like she was ashamed. She said her parents were trying to come pick her up because she, apparently, couldn't handle life as an adult yet. This amused me. Then her parents texted me, asking if I knew where she was because she wasn't at her friend's house. Hearing that, I assumed she was with the guy she mentioned on her computer. At this moment, I remembered we were still on the family tracking app, so I shared her location with her parents. It's really funny to me that she also forgot about the tracking app because she was so pissed in her next message to me. She said I had a lot of nerve to tell her parents where she was and wanted to know why I insisted on ruining her life. Then her dad sent me the best text ever. A photo of her looking extremely pissed and uncomfortable beside some loser slob. Apparently, her parents told the guy that up until today, she was living with another man and in a relationship. When he heard this, he said goodbye to her and walked away. He didn't want to be with a cheater, either. So my ex returned to her parents' home with trash bags full of her clothes and crap all over the porch because she's a stupid girl that demanded way too much attention. She still doesn't earn enough to live on her own, and it seems to have become common knowledge in our area to avoid a romantic relationship with her. Even if she finds someone to reel in, they don't last long because her expectations are still way too high. None of this matters to me, though. I'm quite happy in the dating scene and continue saving money for my future wife and me. Wow, OP. It's a shame so much time was spent on this girl, but it's lucky you found out when you did that she wasn't worth it. Some girls take longer to mature into women because they have to become selfless and acknowledge that the world doesn't revolve around them. Relationships are full of sacrifices from both parties, and for anyone to assume they don't need to be there in support of their partner is a fool. She did not try to think about you or how demanding your job was. Instead, she was absorbed in what she thought she deserved and wasn't receiving. All she had to do was take a step back and realize she had a place to live because of you. You were working a difficult job, and relationships require two self-sacrificing people to blossom. It doesn't seem like she's ready to commit to a permanent relationship, and it was extremely wise of you to call it quits as soon as you found out she cheated. I wish you the very best of luck and hope you are able to heal. Now for today's second story. At the time I'm writing this, our daughter is 1 year old. Just after she was born, my wife and I had been together for 6 years. She was being super sweet towards me, and I finally joked with her and said if there was anything to tell me she could just say it. She replied by saying it was really bad. My stomach flipped and my heart started pounding as she confessed there was something she needed to tell me. She asked if I remembered when she was distant a few years ago, and swore at the time that she didn't sleep with anyone else. Of course I did. Well, she did sleep with someone else. For times with one man. I had a very stern look on my face and said I needed time to process this. 2 days passed, and she told me she needed to read me a letter she wrote. She reads to me that she had a 3-year-long affair that ended 2 years ago. I looked at our newborn daughter in disbelief. Of course, with the math she was giving me, our daughter was mine. But now I looked at my wife and couldn't feel the same about her. She was routinely sleeping with another man for 3 years of our relationship. I can't tell you the amount of pain I felt at this devastation. My world has been crumbling ever since this news. Anyone who's been through this or going through this, I am there with you. Let my experience give you strength because I truly empathize and care about you. I decided to meet with this man and talk to him about it without my wife's knowledge. He agreed, and we each brought a friend in case anything got out of hand. He was more than willing to share the events with me and assured me that he felt extremely bad about it. At the time, my wife lied to him and told him she was nearly divorced. She didn't tell me that part. He said it started off slow at first, but eventually she started taking the subway every Friday to meet up with him and have sex. She told me that was the day she was helping her mother with difficult household chores. He said they hadn't spoken these past 2 years, and he didn't plan on ever speaking to her again. I returned home brokenhearted, just like I had been since my wife told me this news. She noticed me sitting in the car and asked if I'd come in. I told her I needed some time apart and left to stay at my dad's house. She was devastated. Like I said, this was weeks after she gave birth to our daughter, and the previous 2 years of our relationship were blissful. She became committed and caring toward me, like she only needed to decide she was going to be a good wife and instantly became one. Something changed within her, and she decided to dedicate herself to me. At the time, I thought it was a counseling miracle, but now I know it was because she got tired of hiding her secret life and her lover discovered she wasn't single. I don't believe I can forgive her for this. Had I known this was happening back then, I would have left her. It's so unfair that she waited until after our relationship became great, and we had a child together before telling me she had an affair for 3 years. She also told me that every day since it ended, she's lived with guilt and agony. She never felt like she deserved to have me take care of her because she had this dark secret. Now that she finally told me the truth and we had a child together, she felt like our wonderful ever after could begin. Well, she was wrong. Now it was time for her consequences. After I got settled at my dad's and told him what was going on, he took me to his friend and colleague, who happened to be an excellent lawyer. Due to her affair, I wouldn't have to pay her alimony, and since I had a decent income and owned the house, I could get at least 50% custody of our daughter. It's ironic because I told my wife I didn't want either of us to become a person with children from different marriages. She failed me. She failed herself. She failed our daughter. This is the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, but I know for a fact that years from now, her affair will haunt me. How could I be so naive to believe that she wouldn't just cheat on me again? She's done it to me before, and I refuse to become a paranoid and controlling husband. I needed a fresh start with a woman that aims to find and be with one man that will care for her and love her in marriage until the world ends. I won't spend my time anxiously trying to forget that at one point, I shared my wife's body with a stranger. I hope this gives people strength and inspiration to carry on, even when it feels impossible. I've gone on a few dates, and that was a nice reminder that there are lots of fish in the while the divorce was happening. My wife finally started feeling the consequences of her actions so long ago. She was becoming a single mother to a newborn baby and had to move into her parents' house. Her relationship status changed when I changed mine, so all her friends and family wanted to know what happened. I updated my Facebook, so that's where they heard about her affair years ago and about how I refused to stay married to an unfaithful wife. Everyone started telling her how disappointed they were in her and how they couldn't believe she chose to ruin the stable relationship she had with a good man. She could hardly stand it. Each time I saw her, so we could exchange our daughter, she looked tired and sad. I reminded her that she needed to stay strong and keep moving forward for the sake of our daughter. No matter how she felt, our baby needed a mother, and this was her chance to care about someone else more than herself. I think she actually followed my words of wisdom. Wow, OP. I am so sorry you've had this devastating occurrence in your life. What you've endured isn't easy. Don't ever blame yourself for your wife's destructive betrayal. It's not wrong of you to choose divorce, even though your marriage improved after the infidelity. Like you said, if you knew the truth sooner, you wouldn't have stayed with her. Maybe that's why she didn't tell you, because she wanted another chance to stay with you and evade consequences. Even though your daughter is in the picture now, it's better for you to be emotionally stable in her future years than to endure a relationship with betrayal and secrets at its start. You'll have less resentment and feel much more at peace. I wish you and your daughter a good life with hope and stability. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care. Transcribed by https:// Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day or evening wherever you are. In today's story, Opie came home 2 days early from a work trip to surprise his wife. What he then came home to was terrifying. He saw his wife in bed with her affair partner, but rather than confronting them, he recorded them for proof, then walked out and ghosted her. Now, she's history. Let's get into today's story to find out what happened. So, I went on a work trip for a week and told my partner of 3 years, ex, that I was coming home on Sunday, but I had actually booked a fly-in yesterday and take her on a surprise date for her birthday, which I otherwise would have missed. I messaged ex happy birthday yesterday morning and asked what she was doing for the day, to which she replied she would be having a wine and movies night with her friend, Y, who lives in our apartment block. I reiterated that I could not wait to be home on Sunday. She said she couldn't wait and that she loved me. It has been really hard to write and relive this, but when I got home, I parked out by the front of the building on the street, and when I walked through the code gate, I couldn't see lights on up by our balcony. I did see Y's lights on, so I assumed X would be at her place. I didn't even have to enter, as her place was on ground level, and I saw through her window she was on her couch watching TV alone. I figured maybe X was out, so I walked up our 3 flights of stairs, and as I approached the door, I could hear it, and my heart just sank. The sound of R&B music, moaning and knocking. The door wasn't even locked, and with the way it's positioned, opening the door gave a direct view of our bedroom. I just slightly opened the door and saw my girlfriend straddled on top of who I instantly recognized to be a guy from the gym we go to. I think what stood out to me more was that it looked like it was unprotected sex, as I could see everything. I quietly closed the door and my soul just felt like it floated out of me. I knew they never heard me or noticed the door. I sat on the step for a good 5 minutes to process. This has always been my worst nightmare, but to literally have it play out exactly how I dreaded. Another man in our bed just gripped at the heart. I couldn't cry as it felt so surreal. Was this really happening? Was I dreaming? The continued sounds quickly brought me back to earth. I got up and walked out of the building and towards the front gate. Y had spotted me through the window and called out to me and waved, gesturing for me to come over. I do get along very well with her, and in the past she had told X how highly she thought of me as a friend too. She had also openly told X that she found me attractive and asked if I had single friends who were also my nationality, from New Zealand. There had always been chemistry between us the first time I met Y, but that always stayed buried in my mind. I put on a brave face and walked into her apartment. We hugged and she asked what I was doing home early. I told her I had dates mixed up, and wasn't she supposed to be having birthday drinks with X? She seemed confused and told me that X said she was going out for drinks with some of our gym friends. Go figure. I instantly burst out in tears and cried for what felt like forever, and she got quite worried asking what was wrong. Did something happen to me, etc. I struggled for words, but blurted out that I had just walked in on the 2 of them in our bed. Her face turned so white, and she just hugged me and started to cry too. She knew I was a joker, but I think she knew this was no joke. I just started talking out of frustration, saying that I didn't know what to do, that they could be up there all night, and that this was my nightmare. We had no issues in our relationship other than her lack of interest in sex once every 6 weeks. It's a wonder I lasted 3 years with her, and I had accepted that a long time ago. Y laughed through her tears and told me she had always been single and not had sex the entire time she knew me, and joked that maybe we could both use it. That actually made me laugh a bit too, and I hugged her, thanked her, and for a second forgot X was upstairs cheating on me. I asked her if I could stay there for the night as I had nowhere to go, and I slept on the couch. I am still here a day later. I watched the guy leave in the morning and watched in tears when he came back this evening. I'm supposed to be home tomorrow afternoon. I haven't texted X all day, but she hasn't texted me either. Truth be told, the only comfort I have now is with Y. How do I deal with X? Do I walk up there and interrupt? Do I call? Firstly, I want to thank everyone for their views, opinions, and advice. I'm still trying to keep up with reading the comments. I appreciate those saying I should have had a backbone or spine. To be honest, I'd be saying the same things to someone else. This is my first experience with infidelity, so it was easier to judge until it actually happened to me. Anywho, before I tell you what has happened today, I will answer a few questions. Me. I have my own business and run it end to end by myself. I travel maybe 3 times a year to meet with production facilities and do quality checks for my product. Physically, I am 6 feet 6 inches, 124 kilograms, and I play rugby and have done a lot of boxing, so I can definitely defend myself. However, I do not go around using that. I absolutely tower over that piece of crap guy in every way. I earn a very comfortable living, as does X, so a split will not financially cripple either of us. And we're not married. The tears have been shed. I realize this was a blessing in disguise, and I know what I need to do. Apartment. We split all the bills 50 to 50 and have 4 months and a week left on a year-long lease which has both our names on it. We had been actively looking for a home to buy. I guess I dodged a bullet there. Why? What a woman. Aside from her personality, she is absolutely gorgeous. How she is and always has been single, I will never know. And she has not been intimate with anyone in over 3 years, according to X. She has been on my side through it all without saying a cruel word about X. She understands it was a bad thing to do towards me and that it does not involve her. That being said, she has said once X inevitably owns up to it, she will likely stop being friends with her. She has not tried to come on to me like a rebound and has just been super supportive. That alone speaks volumes to her character. X works in a hospital and is very attractive. Nice woman, but can be quite self-centered. In hindsight, we were basically just friends. We have only ever had protected sex because she does not want to get pregnant or go on the pill, and it was once in a blue moon. I guess I just accepted it and got too comfortable in the relationship being what it was. I'm just trying to get my head around how she never even showed signs that she was cheating. I know I'm not perfect, but I have always been good to her, always cooked for her, and did a lot around the house. We went on dates regularly. I told her things about her to make her feel loved, and I always got brushed off after what I thought was a good night. I now question why. If she didn't want me, why did she stay for so long? My plan. I intended to call her this morning to say my flight would be leaving earlier and that could she pick me up at the airport earlier. With the airport being a 40-minute drive away, I would use this time to go up and pack all of my things and rush them to my car. Y said I could put some of it in her spare room. Once X noticed my things missing, she would try to call me, message me, etc., and I would simply respond with a photo of the two of them in bed. After reading comments, I decided the cruelest punishment for her would be to have no closure. I would explain to the property manager my circumstances and go and stay with a friend until I could find a new place. X could cover the rent. She could certainly afford it. I do have the option to stay with Y, but that is way too close to X, and I do not want to do anything with Y that could ruin our friendship, even though I know her and I are inevitable. The outcome. I went up very early in the morning and very quietly opened the door. Fortunately, they were asleep on the bed, so I took a photo of them, but it was weird. I almost felt guilty about violating privacy when my entire relationship was violated. I did not feel sad anymore, just angry and betrayed. I noticed his shoes on the floor next to my various, much larger pairs. I decided to take a photo of those and use it first. I figured it would be a more subtle way that she would likely lie about until I hit her with the photo of them in bed. I went back down to Y's and waited around for another hour or so until I was certain X would be awake. I tried to call but got no answer, and twice again to no answer. I looked at Y, and we both just knew what was happening. After about a half hour, she called me and sounded very much awake and like everything was very much normal. I tried to put on my normal voice and told her my flight was leaving 2 hours earlier than I thought. I asked if she could collect me at 1 p.m. She said yes and that she loved me, that she was at her parents' for breakfast and that they said hello. Lie. On that note, her parents love me and will be broken about this. I went and laid down for a few hours to run through what I would get from the apartment. Other than clothes and a few appliances, most of my stuff was already boxed as I knew that if we bought a house, I wanted an easy move. Around midday, I saw X go down to the car park and I gave it a few minutes after she left before I moved my car and went upstairs. It smelled like air freshener, and I noticed new sheets and covers on the bed. All the dishes were done. She went to every length to cover up that anyone else had ever been there. It took me all but 10 minutes to gather all of my things. If I forgot anything, I probably didn't care about it. It did feel weird knowing it would be a goodbye to the place I called home, but I felt strong. X sent me a message asking where I was as she was at the arrivals area. I replied and said I was held up and that I would Uber home. Maybe an hour later, a bunch of missed calls and messages came in asking where all of my stuff was and if something had happened. My heart nearly beat out of my chest when I sent the photo of the shoes saying these aren't my size. She had the audacity to reply saying that they were her brother's from when he picked her up to go to mom and dad's. Did I not say she would pull something like that? I didn't even want to discuss it, but I knew she was cornered. So I sent the photo of them in bed and I left it at that. She did not even try to call. I was expecting a wave of calls or texts. In my eyes, that was me leaving her, and I know I could have called her out or caught them in the act and confronted them, but I wanted her to know I knew and that she would never be able to know how or explain herself. I will not tarnish her name as it is not in my nature, and I do not want to ruin her life. But she can live with this forever, although I doubt she has a conscience. I have left Wise as I know X will be down to see her soon, and I met my friends nearby collecting today's rundown to relay to you all. If it were not for Y, this would have been a lot harder, but I know she will sever her friendship with X in the next day or two. I am doing well and looking ahead. This hurt at first, but I'm glad I found out now and not after we bought a home. I have sent an email to the property manager informing her of our sudden split and that she would be covering the rent until the lease ended and that she could keep the bond. I think the pain for X will be when Y and I begin our inevitable relationship. Good for you, OP. Glad to hear that you didn't tolerate any of the crap your ex has put you through and have immediately moved on. You do not need to give her any kind of closure whatsoever. She needs to suffer the consequences for her actions and the pain she has caused you. If I were you, I would not get involved with Y right now. I feel like it is too early for you to do that. Instead, I would call your friends and family, tell them everything that happened, and ask if you can stay with them temporarily for the time being. If you're on a lease with her, then contact your landlord and tell them what happened so that you can get taken off. I wish you the best with your situation, OP. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care. I, 27 male, had been with Carrie, 27, for 10 years. We had been best friends since we met at the age of 12 in high school. We had tons of amazing memories. We traveled to several countries together and made long-term work for 3 years while separated due to studies. Though now I'm having trouble believing anything was real. Last Thursday, I proposed to her and not in front of anyone, mind you. I wanted it just to be private. She didn't say anything. And I was thinking, oh shit, did I say or do something wrong? She started crying. And she said she had something to explain to me. She didn't want to marry me because she had been sleeping with a coworker, whom she said was just a friend, for around 3 months. She said she rationalized it was just a thing that would pass. But it continued. And she said she loves me so much more than I'll ever understand, that I've helped her so much, and she doesn't even know why she's done this. She said she loved me too much to marry me knowing she'd done what she did. She doesn't love the guy. It was just sex. And she had been trying to stop the affair. But I proposed before that happened. And she said she knew when I was kneeling that she couldn't marry me. Not after everything I had done for her. So she told me. I feel like my whole world has shattered. We had an awkward flight home on Friday evening and haven't spoken since. She has tried calling me, but I haven't answered, and I have until Monday off. So I'm just here. I've barely eaten. I feel like there's a black hole in my stomach draining everything I have mentally. I can't wrap my head around the fact that she was cheating, that she lied, that she hid it from me. My sister apparently had some words for her. I'm trying to pretend I'm okay, but I'm not. Every morning that I've woken up since last week Friday morning has just been bleak. I love her so much, but I have no intention of getting back together. I don't think I would ever be able to trust her again, much less forgive her for a very long time. My best friend bought a six-pack yesterday, and we drank in the evening. I cried my eyes out in the shower last night. I never cry, not even when my mom, who I was extremely close to, passed away. But I was sobbing like a child last night, and honestly, I would have loved it if my mom had been there to tell me it would be okay. My sister brought over some breakfast this morning and basically made me eat because she knows I haven't really been eating lately, having had zero appetite. Anyway, I'm sorry this post is so incoherent. Any tips for someone on how to best move forward and where to go from here? Because I've got nothing, no ideas, no clue. I feel like a zombie. OP, I'm so sorry you're going through this. She was a big part of your life for a long time. It's going to hurt. It will take time to heal. Let yourself feel what you feel and do whatever you need to in order to mourn the future you are going to share. Use your support system. Stay in touch with friends and family that care about you. Don't isolate yourself. And finally, let go of any contact with your ex, block social media, delete her number, etc. Allow yourself to move on. It's very painful when a loved one betrays us, but you need to remember that you have a very bright future in front of you. Don't waste it on someone who doesn't or didn't respect you. I wish you the best of luck, OP. Now let's get into today's second story. I've been married to my wife for 4 years now, and we've been in a relationship for 7. We've been through some really trying times. She was very upset with me early on in the relationship for not having a chosen career path and not moving quickly through college, largely because of the lack of direction. But I did eventually pick a direction, nursing. She, on the other hand, chose medicine as in being a doctor, knew early on what it would take and moved quickly towards it. She went to medical school. We moved in together. And after a year of me being a stay-at-home husband doing cooking and cleaning and weekly, sometimes daily sessions of moral support and encouragement during her crippling panic attacks, deep bouts of depression and feelings of helplessness and isolation, and ultimately succeeding wildly in her first year of medical school, we decided to get married. Second year of medical school, I got into nursing school and had less time for house duty and moral support, but I was still doing many of those tasks. She did even better in school, felt more stable and confident, and we both did great in school. She then started clinical rotations. This involved moving all over the state for months at a time. We talked daily, went weeks without seeing each other, both continued to do great in school, and felt more lonely but strong in our relationship. Then we graduated. She got into residency across the country, and we moved and both started working. At this point, the only friends that we regularly interact with were a group of people we played video games with on Discord. They were close friends, and things went great initially. We had more time together, and so the relationship got even stronger. We were finally making money, and we were paying down her loans. Medical school debt is serious. I started really succeeding at work. I was given a few raises and thus more responsibilities. I became a full-time charge nurse, getting all kinds of overtime and incentives to work more, and I started making a lot more money. So naturally, I put in more hours, and my wife was in full support of this. She, however, started struggling at work and got more and more depressed and anxious. Our hours didn't match up, and we stopped seeing each other more than a couple of hours a day max, with only a few days a month off of work together. So we planned a vacation together. We decided to go to the country that most of our Discord friends lived in and meet them, and we have a week together like we used to. Another crazy adventure. Then my D-Day hit out of nowhere. She sat me down and asked me if it would be okay if she had sex with one of our Discord friends, the guy that owns the server. I obviously asked where that even came from. I thought she might just want to do it as a novelty, because he's a 30-year-old virgin. She told me that she asked him about it, and he said it would only be okay if I agreed to it. Naturally, I wanted to know why that would even come up. So I started digging for more info. She told me that it was her idea, that she had been planning on asking me too, that it would no big deal, and that I could say no, and it would be all right. Something about it stunk, and I hinted to her that I thought so. I told her that I didn't want us to mess around with polyamory because I've seen it get messy before, every single time I've seen it tried, and because I personally had a history of being cheated on and had very strong emotions involved within having any romantic involvement outside of our relationship, I let her know that even if it was mutually agreed upon by all sides, I would still have a strong negative emotional reaction to it, that it would still really bother me that she even asked. We had this conversation hypothetically at the start of the relationship, and I made it clear that this was off limits, not to mention most people tend to develop strong feelings when sex is involved, and that I suspected that such a request wouldn't be made unless those feelings were already mutually developing. This started the process of me learning exactly how much has been going on behind my back. She told me that she had been spending large amounts of time with this guy in Discord, that she confessed most of her fears, problems, and insecurities about work to him, that she started looking forward to talking to him the whole day she was at work, and he occupied her mind most of the time when she was idle or when I was not home. She told me that she did think it was out of control, that she had crossed the line, and that she was sorry. She said she was just looking for an escape from life, and that I was never around anymore, which is true. I'm at work most of the time, and so is she, and she said that she wished she had just started smoking again. All I could manage to think or say was that I was angry at her and at him, and that I would need to think about how I was going to handle it, and that I didn't want things to change. I didn't want to lose my friends or my wife. I told her it was out of the question and that it would be a deal breaker if it continued, and that I would try to talk to the guy and get things back to normal. She agreed to put a stop to any romantic involvement. We ran out of time to talk, and we had to go to bed so we could get to work in the morning. All we could agree on was that we wanted our relationship to stay healthy, and we would need to discuss this more to facilitate that. I spent the next few days growing increasingly more agitated at my work. She mentioned several times that the guy was talking about polyamory more in Discord and suggested that we read a book about it. I started to notice exactly how much time she spent with him in Discord while I was at work. I was losing my focus, and I had no time to deal with the situation and just couldn't concentrate. I was avoiding Discord at home because the guy was always online, a mom's basement kind of guy. I was just focusing on not exploding at every moment. Finally, I decided to get on her computer and look at her Discord chat with him. I found out that she had been having what amounted to phone sex with him, that she had said she had to stop, and probably the next day, she decided to do it again. I couldn't sleep that night, not awake. She was in the middle of rounds. I decided to get out of bed 4 hours early to just tell the guy my feelings over text, and ask him specifically to promise to refuse any romantic advances from her if she tried to initiate it, or that I would have to cut contact with him and insist she did the same. He told me he agreed not to seek any romantic activity. I pushed the matter over and over trying to get him to agree to this. He basically told me that he didn't believe in the ownership of other humans, and that we just saw the world differently, and that he thought she and I should seek professional help because the next guy may not be as honorable as him. That was the last time I talked to him. I went to work in a very unsafe state for the people I was supposed to be caring for. Miraculously, everything went fine. She texted me when she got home that she talked to him, and then she asked what happened. So I told her to pull up my Discord and read it. She really didn't like what he had to say. This was the last time she talked to him since. I told her we needed to both cut contact with him, and she agreed. I also told her I knew that more had been going on, and I wanted her to tell me. She just started crying and said she didn't want me to hate her forever. She did seem extremely remorseful. I tried to reassure her that I was just as committed to making it work if she would just be honest with me and make some promises. She said she couldn't be totally honest about everything yet, but promised she would do anything to make me feel more trust. Then she changed the subject to her feeling like a complete and utter failure at everything. The conversation turned to her work, and she got tired and went to bed. The next day, she was told she had failed her pediatrics rotation and would need to repeat it. This sent her over the edge. I've never seen her so low. I was worried she might try to kill herself. She asked me to call into work, which I did, and I spent the day just trying to make the world seem better for her. Long talks, waffles at dinner, and a Star Trek marathon. This part just now happened. Now she's asleep, and the reality of my life is coming back. She cheated on me, immediately after agreeing to stop doing so again. I'm severed from my friend group, maybe forever. I don't want to tell my friends and family about it because I don't want them to hate her, and I don't want to push the matter with her because I'm afraid I'll push her over the edge when she's at her weakest. I'm just lost and looking for some way to vent everything. Any thoughts at all are welcome. I obviously want to make it work. I have major trust issues now, and I'm torn between being raging angry and wanting to help support her through this low point. I just feel kind of alone in this. I do feel a little better just writing this out now, even if no one reads that. OP, she's not the victim here. She's the abuser. She cheated. You shouldn't be trying to make her feel better. She should be taking responsibility for what she did. I strongly urge you to stop rescuing her from herself and think of how to rescue yourself from this toxicity. I wish you the best of luck, OP. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on today's stories. Take
This story is called Cheating Flight Attendant Wants an Open Relationship. I have never been to a forum. I am 48 years old and my wife is 44, and we have been married for 15 years. We had a good relationship, at least I thought we did, but it has been almost 2 years since we have had any real intimacy. My wife had some childhood trauma way back when I won't say what it was, but it's affected her for a good portion of her life. But with therapy, she has been able to overcome most of it. One of the reasons we didn't have any kids was while she was going to therapy, she was on quite a bit of medication. Some of this medication has some serious side effects, but she really didn't have many setbacks from the medication before my wife became a flight attendant. She was helping her father run a gas station they own. They had a falling out because she wanted more money. Her becoming a flight attendant came out of nowhere. She had lunch with a friend of hers who was a flight attendant and told her how lucrative the position can be. She told my wife that when she became a flight attendant, they started her out at $35,000 per year. But she told my wife the downside to being a flight attendant: it's hard to maintain a relationship in most cases. After that meeting, my wife and I talked about it since my wife had a necessary education of requirements. And I think the airlines required some additional schooling and training. She applied at 4 different airlines: Delta, United Airlines, Frontier Airlines, and Southwest Airlines. Delta was the only one that hired her at first. I was happy for her. She was making about the same as I was making at the time, and she kept getting raises every year. It seemed substantial raises, but what I didn't know then is that this job came with the price. My wife was gone a lot. I mean, it seemed like she was going every day, only coming home for a few days at a time. When she was home, she wasn't really present. I couldn't figure out why. After about the 3rd year of her being a flight attendant is when I noticed her behavior slightly shifting. She would come home and we would have a few days of bliss, but it seemed like the 2nd week she was back home, she was thought to get strange. Not only did her behavior change, her spending habits also changed. She was buying a lot of sexy clothes, but I didn't see her in those clothes. I started to get suspicious, but I didn't want to accuse her of anything. I wanted to make sure before I confront her with indisputable evidence. So as the weeks and months go by, she is still traveling, coming home, not touching me, and spending lots of money on clothing. Well, I had lunch with a friend one day and told him what was happening. He travels quite a bit himself, and he honestly said, "I don't know what I can tell you." Then he said, "If she is cheating on you away from home, how will you find out?" He said hiring a private investigator may be your only option, but it's going to be expensive. He was right. I knew it would be expensive. So I called around to a few places, actually found a husband and wife team that were private investigators. After work, I went to see them and told them all of my suspicions. She wasn't initiating anything with me in the bedroom, buying clothes and not wearing them in front of me. Then this guy's wife said, "What does she do for a living?" I said, "She's a flight attendant." She shakes her head and said, "Sir, I don't have a good feeling about what you told me." My heart just sank after she said that. I told them I needed to find out what was going on. They gave me their price. It would cost me almost $7,000 to follow her while she was traveling and get the video footage. They told me to go home and think about it and get back to them when I have the opportunity. One went back home, and to my surprise, my wife wanted to talk to me, and it wasn't pleasant. She basically told me, not in so many words, she was not happy with our sex life and wanted to explore an open relationship. I said, "What the hell do you mean?" She says, "I want to see other men." I basically told her no way. I am not doing that then, she says, so you want me to be unhappy with our boring sex life? I said no. I don't want you to be unhappy, but I am not willing to accept that I am not participating in an open relationship. Well, as you guessed it, that conversation didn't resolve anything. We went to bed not speaking to one another that night. The next day, I met with the husband and wife team that are private investigators and pay them their fee of $7,000. The husband was going to stay behind and his wife was going to travel and do the surveillance on my wife. I told them my wife was leaving on a certain day. I gave them a picture of her, what kind of car she drove, and where she usually hangs out when she is home. Over the next few days before she was due to travel again, their surveillance showed her on her cell phone a lot and going to the mall on occasion, mostly by herself on the day she was traveling. The private investigators sent me a text showing my wife walking next to a man, and they were walking rather quickly. I assumed to make sure they made the flight. The private investigators simply asked me, did I know this man? I simply replied that I didn't, so the private investigators sent me a text saying from that point on she was documenting everything and would be in touch as soon as they landed. Later that night, the private investigators said that my wife and the same guy she boarded the plane with went to a hotel which had a bar in it. They had drinks and then went up to the hotel room together. The next day, the private investigators sent me a text saying that my wife had checked out of the hotel by herself at around 11 in the morning, but she said that wasn't enough. She wanted to get them together, embracing, kissing, something, words that I didn't want to hear, but my gut was telling me she was cheating while the private investigator was telling me all this. I still had to somehow focus at work. I work as a computer analyst, and my job is stressful enough. I get home that night around 9 p.m., and the private investigator called me. She had footage of my wife and this guy embracing each other outside the hotel, kissing for about 15 minutes before getting into a cab together and leaving. My world came crashing down. That very moment, I sat in my living room, almost lifelessly pondering how to proceed from here. That's when I decided there is only one thing I can do now is file for divorce. But I wasn't going to let her know that I was filing for divorce. That night, I started researching laws related to adultery as well as divorce laws in my state, in which is Arizona. To my surprise, it's a class 3 misdemeanor, but I didn't want to do that. I found a lawyer and met with her right away. I told a lawyer I already had a private investigator on the job, and I gave the lawyer some of the footage the private investigator had, and she will be giving me more footage. I paid the retainer to the lawyer, and she said she would help me proceed with the divorce when I am ready and also get her more proof of my wife's infidelity. So, after leaving the lawyer's office, my private investigator has sent me a text asking me to call her. So, I did. She tells me she is going to end the investigation. I asked her why. She says, what I am about to send to you is probably enough for you to divorce your wife. My heart just started racing. She sends me a clip of them having sex in the back of a rental car, and she says if you want more footage, she can, but reiterated that she really didn't need to go any further, and I agreed. But after she said that, she told me she was going to find out who this guy was and get information on him as well. At this point, I was so broken. My heart just stopped beating at the sight of this video. My wife was soon to come back in 4 days, so I had to start planning on what I needed to do as soon as possible. One of the first things I did was remove her from all of my credit cards. She hardly used them, but just a precaution. I removed her second. She was a beneficiary on my insurance policy. I removed her from being a beneficiary and made my mom the beneficiary temporarily. To my credit, we never commingled funds, meaning we always had separate bank accounts, so I didn't need to do anything there since we both owned the house. I knew I couldn't just kick her out, so I asked my lawyer, what should I do in this situation? She said the house is community property and will be split between both parties. Once my lawyer told me that, I started looking for another place to stay and found a place that was close to my mom's house. Fast forward a day. I get a call from my private investigator. She tells me that my wife's AP is married, owns a used car dealership, and has 2 kids, and has another business with someone else. She told me she sent a packet to me with all of his information and his address. So that day I had my lawyer file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and I started packing my things. My soon-to-be ex-wife was due to come back in 2 days. The next step was to get this packet to this guy's wife and get it to her before he returns. I got off work that evening and went to her house and knocked on the door. She answered through her Ring doorbell asking who I was and what I wanted. I just came out and said, "Ma'am, I think your husband is having an affair with my wife." And I have proof. Needless to say, her door opened with lightning speed. When I saw her, I just handed her the packet and walked away. The next day, my wife was scheduled to come home, so that morning I took off work to move some of my things to storage just to be out of the house until my apartment was ready. I had to stay with my mom for a few weeks. Until then, the next step was to get home with the second packet before my wife did and leave it on the dining room table for her to see. I was pretty much moved out by then. I eventually got home before my wife did and left the packet on the table. By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, I had over 200 calls on my phone and doubled that amount in text messages. She called me and sent me text messages up until midnight. I didn't answer her calls or respond to her text messages. I was mad and done. At the same time, a few days later, my wife was served with divorce papers, and I did not hear from her. When she did get them, fast forward a week, and my attorney calls me and says my soon-to-be ex-wife isn't asking for anything too crazy in the divorce. No alimony. She just wants one car and her half of the equity in the house. At the divorce hearing, it was quick and painless. We agreed to split the equity in the home. I agreed to give her one of the cars we owned, and we agreed to split some of the belongings in the house. About 4 months after the divorce, I learned that my ex-wife's AP was arrested on federal fraud charges. Apparently, he was fraudulently obtaining government contracts with his business partner, and I also learned that my ex-wife never stopped seeing her AP, even when she was blowing up my phone that night and professing her love for me. 2 months later, we sold the house and split the equity we had in the house. When I was at the closing, she was trying to talk to me. I simply told her we don't have anything to discuss outside of the sale of the house. After that, I never heard from or saw her again. Last I heard, she was still a flight attendant, and she may have been involved in her AP's fraud case. When I got this story, I was told to leave the names out for privacy reasons. In my opinion, I don't think I would have spent $7,000 for a private investigator, but his private investigator had to travel to get proof, which really didn't matter anyway, because his ex-wife only wanted a few things, including the equity in the home. I imagine he recouped that $7,000 he spent from the sale of the house. I don't think he was a simp in this case. In my personal opinion, I think he handled the situation the best way he thought he should have handled it. He didn't lose a lot of money, and his divorce was quick.